Trading Time with your host, John Rousseau.
My guest today on Trading Time is Lyra Lurtz. She runs an amazing business called Habit and Kin. It's a cleaning and detail service for your home. I'm happy to have her on today to discuss her work experience, which is vast. Please enjoy my conversation with Lyra. Lyra, thank you for joining us today on Trading Time. You have a very unique set of skills that I want to honor and showcase today. You have a background in skilled trades in the culinary arts to start with, and I just want to go through your work history and tell me a bit about your life and your journey.
Yeah. How far back do you want to go?
Well, we started a conversation off a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about doing this discussion about the service industry.
Yeah.
And food service specifically. And I believe you started off in a bakery scenario.
I did.
On the Sunshine Coast, was it?
Yeah, in Lund, BC. And it was my friend's mom's bakery. And we all started about at 12 years old. And
is that legal? Am I allowed to say that?
Can I say that? We, were about,
is she going
we
to
might
jail
have been
now?
a little younger than 12. But it was, what was it, the 90s. It was fine. And it was amazing. It was like the best experience ever. It was so fun. It was a great experience. It's a bunch of women baking and kids doing dishes. And I just stayed in that until I finished high school. And then I moved to Vancouver and went into the culinary world. And it was very different than the little wholesome bakery that I worked in when I was little. So it was definitely a different experience.
You grew up in Lund?
I did.
Give me a sense of what that community is like. I've never been. I've seen it on a map.
Yeah, it's kind of like a fishing town. It's a little tiny community. A lot of people who live out off the land. A lot of my stepdad is an oyster farmer, so we grew our own vegetables and fished and that sort of thing. So a lot of people end up there that want a different way of life that is more, I want to say relaxed and more like just in tune with nature.
Yes.
So that was kind of the environment that I grew up in. It was like we grew all our own stuff. We made all our own food and stuff from scratch. We did everything kind of in that direction. So
oyster farming.
Oyster farming.
Unbelievable. What does that look like? I mean, I've seen it, but can you describe it?
Yes, it's crazy. So you work the tides, and usually the tides are at night. So you go out and pick oysters off the beach, depending on the tide. So often you'll be out at like 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. kind of thing. In the winter, summer, all of that. And it's hard work. It's really physically demanding hard work.
Lots of up and down.
Lots of up and down. And
so they just roll in. They get swept into the program. Like, how are they getting up on how are you finding them? How do they get there?
For my stepdad, he owns oyster farms, oyster leases. So you can apply for permits on different beaches, and you can own these permits. I think they're a lease. Like, you don't actually own the beach, but you can be the only person who
can farm it.
That's right. And they do oyster seeding. So you put it's almost like a larva. Yeah. And they settle on the beach, and then they produce new oysters and stuff. And since like when I was little, we mostly did that, but there was also long lines with these tubes. So when they put the oyster seeds, larvae, into the ocean, they attach to these really long tubes and then start growing off the tubes. So I remember when I was a teenager, I'd go out and help him, and you'd pull these tubes up from the long lines, and they were probably about 20 feet long, just straight out of the water. You had to pull them up. And if they bent, the oysters would fall off into the ocean.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty crazy.
Because I've seen, I don't know what, just giant poles
Yeah.
driven into the muck
Yeah.
for, is it mussel farming?
It might be mussels.
Mussels or clams or something
Yeah.
like that. And they're just completely covered in them.
It's crazy. I don't like, I still don't understand how they don't just swim away, or the tide comes and like they just go away, but
Wow.
they make it work. I don't know. It's
Amazing. Are they still on? Are they
yeah,
your parents still there?
He's been oyster farming for, I'm gonna say like 40 years now.
Unbelievable.
40. Yeah. It's crazy. And then you get like what is it, when algae blooms?
Yes.
And so you constantly testing the water to see if it's like a whole science. I don't know. It's crazy. So
Wow.
yeah.
Amazing. I mean, I love oysters. I don't know if you do or not, but
once I have two other sisters, and we hated seafood when we were kids. And then once we moved to Vancouver and we realized like what we had,
wow.
we definitely learned to appreciate it in a different way. And I love oysters now too. And prawns, we used to have bowls like this of prawns for dinner, like all prawn season.
Wow.
And we were like, oh, we're tired of prawns.
Too many spot prawns.
Right? Now I'm like, oh my God, we're crazy. So yeah,
So that sounds like a really idyllic childhood. In
was
comparison to the striving of most people nowadays. You grew up in Lotus Land.
Yeah, and I had no clue that I was growing up in like such an amazing environment until I turned into an adult and I moved to a city, and I realized, oh, okay, like there's definitely a really big contrast to the way that we were raised, and like faster paced city life is way different. Like I have a different view of where food comes from, and like it's interesting to me. Like now you go into a grocery store and almost everything is like pre-made for you.
Yeah.
And it's wild to me because it's not as enjoyable. Like when you do something from start to finish, it's a lot more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess when time is at such an amazing premium, being able to buy out these services of meal preparation and food growing and all of those things become an inevitability almost.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You take a look at how much extra time you have to do stuff.
I think like that is like when we were kids, we would be like up at sunrise. Like this sounds like, I walked uphill both ways to school in the snow, but it was really like, like we had a farm, we had animals. They had 3 girls, so we would go like feed the horses and the pigs and like do our rounds and and we hated it. We were like, this is torture. I can't wait to move to the city and like get away from this. And now I'm like, I had no idea how amazing it was, because it was a lot of work. Like you said, like you just work nonstop to make it all kind of run.
But isn't that interesting how could you potentially propose that it was the same amount of work?
Yes, absolutely.
Except you're working directly for your own sustenance and existence, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being some litigator.
Yes, absolutely. Like now I'm like, I was like clueless to how amazing it was. And now I'm like, I want that back.
Yeah, wow, amazing.
Yeah.
The bait and switch.
Totally, 100%. Like no clue. But it's almost like you have to go away to appreciate what you had or something. I don't know. It's hard to see what you have when you're growing up in it.
How many people lived in that community? How big was it when you were there?
I want to say like maybe 10,000. Maybe
really?
not even, maybe 8,000. But everyone was like scattered. Our nearest neighbor was probably, I don't know, in miles. It would take me like about 10, 15 minutes from our house to walk to the nearest house.
Oh, wow.
So it was pretty isolated.
Yeah. Huh. And good group of friends. I mean, you probably didn't need any friends if you had two other sisters. That
No.
probably ate up a lot of your bandwidth.
Yeah, well, no, really good group of friends. Everyone grew up like, a really good group of friends.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You moved to the city. You moved to Vancouver.
Yeah.
Where were you living there?
So my dad lived in North Vancouver. So I was one of the only kids growing up in that community that actually would go back and forth
Oh, wow.
from Lund to Vancouver, because my mom and my stepdad lived in Lund.
Yeah.
And
How frequently?
when I was really little, it was about every 2 weeks, and then as I got older, it was like once a month or so.
Yeah.
I'd go back to Vancouver. So I kind of had a foot in each world a little bit.
Wow.
And when I moved to Vancouver, I lived with my dad in North Vancouver. Found a job in a bakery on the North Shore, and it was amazing. And then kind of progressed from there and decided to go to culinary school. And it was fun too. And then, once I finished, I kind of moved up into management roles in restaurants and stuff.
I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about technical vocational training in the province.
Yeah.
Both good and bad. What was the culinary program like when you took it, and where did you go?
So I went to the culinary school in Granville Island, PICA.
Oh, nice.
Pacific Institute of Culinary Arts, I think it's called. And I loved it. But I had already worked in the culinary industry since I was 12. And I think I was there when I was, say, 24-ish. And I had a lot of fun in culinary school. And I remember saying the whole time, like, this is not real life.
Right.
This is not real, it was fun. Like, we learned a lot, but is it necessary to go to culinary school? I don't think so. Like, I pretty much, you can be self-taught. You can go work in a restaurant and learn all of the things that you learned in culinary school, and you probably would come out with a better perspective of what it really is to work in a restaurant versus if you go into culinary school, it's not really what it's like working in a restaurant.
It's a supervised, guided learning experience.
It's really fun. You can be like, hey, chef, can I have a tuna to work with tomorrow? And sure, you can play around a lot. It was a lot of fun. But the reality of it is very different than working in a restaurant where you're probably there for 12 to 14 hours. You're grinding, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
So it was fun. But
I shared with you the other day that if I was ever in charge of the government, which is unlikely, but I know that there are a lot of countries in Europe or other places that require young people to serve in the military.
yes.
And I know that we talked about
Right, I
making it
remember
a
saying that.
requirement for Canadians to serve in the restaurant industry for a time.
Yes.
And I think I also might have mentioned that it's so obvious when you are out for dinner with somebody who hasn't
Right. I remember you
worked
saying
in the
that.
restaurant industry, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Because there are things that after serving people like that you can't unlearn.
Yes.
And sensitivities to the people that are serving you and
Yeah.
and insights that you have.
Yeah. It definitely is a really, you learn a lot of I don't want to say street smarts, but something along those lines, life skills. It's not just cooking and showing up and, serving people food. There's so much more that goes on in that dynamic of, I don't know if things have changed because I haven't worked in a restaurant for quite some time, but I remember working in restaurants in my early 20s and the chef would fling a ladle across the kitchen and everyone just got used to ducking. It was just you had to be really aware of all of the personalities going on in the kitchen too.
The 14-hour shift thing that you talked
Yeah.
about. So working in the restaurant industry teaches you that work ethic
Yes.
and endurance
Yes. Yeah.
and how to pace yourself, but also how to perform on a deadline.
Yeah.
When we have these bills coming into the kitchen, you look at every single one of those has like, when did this come in?
Yeah.
Well, it came in at 8:40. What time is it?
Yeah.
You know, there's like an expectation of service. We can't have these people sitting in the dining room. We gotta get this food out,
Right.
And that.
There's a high pressure. Like
Whoa.
it's very high pressure for such a short window of time every day. And and if one little thing throws off like your workflow, then it can disrupt the whole night. It can, you get really good at adapting and like learning how to fix things before they even break, kind of. You're like, oh, okay, like I can see that might be a potential problem. Like maybe you're are running out of French fries and you're like, we only have 2 buckets of fries left. Like it's a heavy fry night, it sounds silly, but you're like, I gotta get someone. It's like you get really good at doing, like, adapting really quickly to things that are changing really rapidly. And personalities too. Like you get some pretty funny personalities. I'm sure it's like that in most industries, but you get some pretty interesting people that you work with. Some people are there, it's like their professional career. They're there for like, a profession. Like they're, they are making it their career. And so they have standards for themselves. They have expectations. The environment that they work in, they want it to be like in a certain way. And then you get people who are maybe students or maybe
Transient.
Yeah, they're transient. They're not doing it for a career. And so when those two things kind of come together, it can be chaos.
Yes.
For sure.
Why aren't you taking this as seriously as I am?
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess that's not unique.
No.
What
Care
we've just.
more about the fries.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you definitely know when you're being served by an industry professional with that longevity that you've described. Like they know all the little tricks.
Yeah.
They know how to approach the table, how to leave the table. You immediately know when you're being served by one of these people by the way they're carrying plates, by the way they're clearing, by the way they're talking to you.
Like servers especially, they're like amazing to watch. Like some of the professional ones, they carry these trays that you're like, how is that even possible? Gravity should send it completely over, or like, and they're just like, it's beautiful when you watch like the flow going in a smooth, like nice way. It's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a bit of a ballet.
It is
in a sense, isn't it? You mentioned something that kind of reminded me of like when you're in those high pressure scenarios. You're like, the only reason why I'm in a super high pressure scenario right now is because of my lack of preparation.
Yes.
And just that lesson alone, you look at and you just go like, is what I'm doing right now going to be serving future me? That's a great lesson that you can apply.
I mean, I don't know if it's a teachable lesson. It's like you have to learn that the hard way on your own. Right. And hopefully you clue into like, yes, future you will really be happy that you did these things.
Prepped another bucket of fries.
Right. But I don't know. I like the food. I really like cooking for people, and I really like the joy that like serving a meal can bring to people, and that's something that I really enjoyed and that drew me to the culinary world. Was like just it's really special. I don't know, maybe it's from my like growing something from scratch and doing it all, and then finally serving it. Like it is a really good feeling to do stuff like that. So I don't work in the culinary world anymore, but I still love to cook for people. Like it's makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
Doing stuff like that.
It is a nice ministry, isn't it?
It is.
To be able to sit people down and show them hospitality like that.
Yeah. It feels good. So there's something about like a meal that's made, from start to finish, and you get it on the table and everyone can kind of relax and have a good time. I like that.
That seems increasingly rare.
It does, doesn't it?
Is it just me or like, it seems to me as though there's an element of hospitality that's just been lost in our Netflix culture that we have.
I think it's like everything is so fast paced and your time is not necessarily your own anymore. So by the end of the night when you get home, you're like, the last thing that I feel like doing is socializing.
Having the neighbors over for a pot of soup.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, it's different. Everything just seems so much faster.
I'm going to challenge you to do something in the next couple of days and think about the people that you're the closest with. Mm-hmm. And then think about the people that you're not as close with socially. And because I've done this exercise, there are people that cook for me. Mm. Believe it or not. Still.
Yeah, they invite you over for dinner and yeah.
And then I did an inventory not too long ago of like people that have been in my life a long time and have never made me dinner.
Shocking.
Never made me. And then I was like, I called him out on it finally. And I said, hey, dude, you know what I noticed the other day? You've never made me dinner. And he kind of got offended almost, right? And I'm just like, think about how many times I've had you over to my house for dinner.
Yeah.
Can you even count how many times he's like, well, it's just not my thing. I'm just like, some reciprocity would be nice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I guess the whole point in the exercise is to see the actual importance of hospitality on a relationship.
Yeah.
And how when you are collectively coming together, whether it's a potluck scenario or maybe you're working on something together or whatever, like that's intimate time.
It is.
It's nice intimate time.
It is. It's true. It really is. You feel like connected when you're doing that.
Yeah. We have this couple that we've really grown close to over the last 4 years, and we're watching our families grow up at the same time. We've got kids the same age, whatever, and like we'll just go over to each other's houses, early in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And just pound out some dishes.
That's so fun.
You know what I mean? And it's
so
like
fun.
a progressive eating.
Yes.
For hours. And the kids are bonking heads.
Sounds like a dream.
Yeah, right? And so I don't know, maybe that's how it was when we grew up.
I think it probably was. We did a lot of potlucks and stuff like that when we were kids growing up. Yeah. And then when we moved to Vancouver, I still did that in Vancouver. And then, I don't know, it just changed over the years.
What happened?
I don't know.
What is it? I'm trying to figure. I constantly blame it on tech.
Yeah.
I like to just easily blame it on tech because I'm just looking at the variables. Like when we grew up, we didn't have all this tech.
It's true.
My parents didn't have all this tech.
It was more social, for sure.
So is it that, like my dopamine receptors are satiated enough when I just watch this show and hang out at home and eat out of the freezer?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Could be.
Seems like it's not the best.
I know. A lot of things have changed like really quickly over the last 20 years, like with tech, like everything has just changed and gotten different. Yeah. And you can see it pretty apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, the meal thing I think is so critical. I hope that at some point there is a renaissance in meal production and hospitality in our culture.
Yeah.
I really love going out for meals.
I do too.
I love it.
I do too.
Especially when, you have those restaurants that are paying attention.
Yeah.
They're innovating.
Yeah.
They're, updating their menu and making it easy for you to justify spending large amounts of money with them.
Yeah.
Right? It's like nothing's worse than going out as an industry professional like you and me with previous experience, going to a place and being like, oh.
I actually have gotten to a point now where if I can cook it at home myself, I'm not gonna go.
Exactly.
But I'll go to the really unique places that I know I can't make that. Like I don't, if it's something I can do at home, I'll just do it at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elma in Penticton.
Amazing.
What an amazing example of an amazing example.
Yes.
The innovation, the flavor profiles, the constantly changing of the menu, the environment, like
It's beautiful. They're doing such a beautiful job.
they're really doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
Hey? In an era where it seems as though there is a gap in hospitality, to have an actual restaurant
Yeah.
that didn't just like insert themselves into what used to be an insurance building. You know, like a purpose-built restaurant.
Yes.
What a concept.
It's amazing that we have it in Penticton.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. Have you been there recently?
I haven't been there since the break.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't been there since the break, but I think I went in November. And their ingredients that they use in their, like, it's so good. Like, it's stuff that you wouldn't try, stuff that you probably wouldn't even be able to get at a grocery store. You know, like, it's amazing. The flavor profiles are like...
You'd have to know somebody that knew that spice existed.
Yeah.
Know where to get it.
Right.
And have some of it in order to try that flavor.
Totally.
And that's what they've done there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I don't know about you if you've had this experience in that restaurant specifically, but like you walk up to this beautiful building, it's busy inside, it's exciting to see people communing like that, but then you go like upstairs and you turn at the corner up the staircase and you look and there's the bar, and the bar looks really beautiful and there's someone beautiful behind it making a drink. But then you look out toward the lake. I don't know, like I felt like I was in I was in an AI environment. Cuz I'm like, where are we right now? I feel like I'm in a different country. So, and I think that's really what's missing in that hospitality experience is the whole sensory change.
Yeah.
That is required for you to be able to like fall in love with a place.
Yeah, and justifying like what you said, like a lot of the prices, just overall, like we've experienced like inflation since COVID going up, and so like to justify the prices of those things, you want a full sensory overload when you go out to dine. You know, it's like
yes, you do.
You do, and then you're like, oh, this is amazing. Like this is beautiful. I love everything about this. If you go, you know, like. If you go and like you're, you know, like we go to Kelowna sometimes and we're like, oh, should we just like go get a burger or something? And it's like a $25 burger and you're like, I don't know if I like this. Like, this makes me sad. I don't know, you know? So it's interesting to see how the culinary world continues to grow and develop. It's really interesting to see it.
Yeah, it is. It is. I you know, it's shocking to me that looking back at, did you ever live in Summerland?
No.
Did you visit often or?
I didn't.
Because your husband's from here?
He's from here, yeah.
Yeah.
So we would come up like once or so in the summers,
Yeah.
but I actually never experienced winter in the Okanagan until I lived here.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's like
quite different.
Very different
Quite
from the
different.
coast, very different. I was like, what did I do?
A moment of regret.
Yeah, I was like, oh no. But it's beautiful. Now I'm used to it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But
In Summerland, we used to have two really amazing restaurants that had like really awesome chefs that cared, and teams that they assembled that cared, and a hospitality experience. And that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And our population has grown.
Yeah.
There are more young professionals and so on. The restaurant and hospitality offering locally is embarrassing. You'd think that it would be better.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for it, that's for sure.
There's a lot of opportunity for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you worked in the restaurant industry, right, for a while?
Yeah, in the kitchen and in service as well.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is important to do both.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seems like with the evolution of our industries and everything else, you'd think that there would be somebody willing to take a chance the way Elma did in Penticton.
I think
more so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
We always joke, like, when I went when I worked in the bakery and then I went to culinary school and I went with like the sole purpose of having my own cafe or restaurant.
Really?
I did. I was like, this is amazing. I love this. Like, it's such a great environment. Like when I worked in the bakery and then when I went to culinary school, like I kind of had seen both sides of the coin, right? But I was still like, I want to have my own restaurant. And then by the time I came out of culinary school, I was like, not a chance.
Really?
Do I want my own restaurant? You have to be, we always joke, like people who open restaurants are people who have never worked in the industry. Because it's like, you gotta be a special type of crazy to like, it's like a labor of love for sure. And it's pretty volatile. And there's like the competition is insane. And then you add on a level of like staffing and trying to find people to work in the restaurant is like, it's so hard to make all of those things come together and work. And like the profit margin is so small compared to how much you're putting out that it's really hard to make a restaurant work and make a go of it. It's like a marathon, you know, you're not sprinting anywhere. You got to really know it's going to take 5 or 10 years to like of grinding to get it to where you want it to be.
And so many variables that could come in the way of you making that successful.
Yes. Like, who knows, like maybe there will be a global pandemic and you'll have to close your,
Oh, man.
you know, like it's,
yeah.
It's wild. Like it really disrupts it and it's so expensive. Like commercial kitchen, to install a commercial kitchen is like, I want to say it's hundreds of thousands of dollars if you do it right.
It's a workshop. You're building a workshop.
Yeah.
It's just like setting this up. Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
You have to worry about like fire safety and like refrigeration and freezers and like all of these crazy things that just, it's like so much money out before you see money in. And then in the smaller communities, there's less of a population for staffing.
Yeah.
And so like if you can't staff your restaurant, you can't stay open. Yeah. So I think it's like that is like a really challenging thing that I've noticed in the Okanagan is like it's hard to find people because it's also like a huge tourism industry. So like in the summer it peaks, people come here to work, but then it goes down. And if you have a restaurant, you're 12 months a year, you're not summer months. So I think that might be like one of the most challenging things.
Oh, you're right. Could you imagine if the government mandated your business be shut down due to health concerns after you've just finished building it? Like what happened to our friends in Penticton there? Could you imagine?
No.
You'd be like, whoa, what? We just opened up. COVID was a crazy time, hey, for that? Like, what? That was insane to think about, being able to shut down vast sectors of the economy.
It still baffles my mind to think about that actually happened. And
it's crazy.
It's so crazy.
So add that onto the already catastrophically difficult business model that you're trying to...
And then you know, like how like to build chairs and you know like furniture for restaurants and stuff. Like it's
Well, and that was the other thing. I mean, you take a look at they were our clients. They are our clients. We have lots of wineries that we've worked with over the years and other businesses, and they are not calling us right now.
Yeah, it's just everything. I think people are still recovering from it.
Majorly.
Yeah.
And then you couple that with what happened. You know, you take a look at how intimately connected the food service industry is, and that was a function of the wine industry. Yes. And the wine industry just lost 90% or more of their vines.
I saw that happening. That was crazy.
And so then you think like, okay, well, if this is a symbiotic relationship these two industries have, like, does the hospitality industry rebound from this? Why are people coming here? Like, and so when you hear these tourism numbers coming in, I heard tourism 38% down.
Oh, okay.
Like
I didn't hear
major.
That. Yeah.
So hospitality, volatile industry.
It's really
as you've pointed out.
Yeah, it's like it's the longer you're in it, the more you're like, oh, you gotta be like, you know, you got to be really, really resilient to stay in it and keep going and keep pushing and like look at like long term, you know, to keep yourself going.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's exhausting.
Yeah. Somebody told me how to become a millionaire one time. Start off as a billionaire and then buy a winery.
Yes.
Or a restaurant,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so, but it's really too bad because, you know, I've also talked to other people as well that talk about the importance of hospitality culturally. Like one of our guests spent a lot of time in Spain.
Oh, yeah.
And just like, you know, that was the whole thing. Like we get
Yes.
together in our little restaurant, these little plates of food come out, there's a guy playing a guitar over here.
Yeah.
We're talking.
Yeah.
We're doing business.
Yeah.
Our kids are running around.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's like the glue that ties everything together, I think. Like it really like, you know, especially in European countries, like
Right.
the food, it's just, I don't know, you can sit down and like you said, you know, spend hours and hours eating and like it's such a enjoyable experience to do that. And I don't know if we really do that in North America the way that they do it in Europe. It's not the same.
No, it isn't. I guess another question that I have is like from an ambiance perspective, you know, like if we are not purposefully creating these spaces.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You know, then you're like, well, how much time am I really going to want to spend in that building that, like I said, used to be an insurance broker?
Yeah.
You know, I'm just going to go in there, I'm going to eat, I'm going to leave.
Yes.
Right? Versus what you just described in Europe, where it's like, no, this has like been a restaurant for like 300 years, and it's in this like plaza.
Yes.
And all these other like contemporary synergistic businesses are all around, and we're sitting here, and somebody's serving me a latte, and
Yes.
it's sensory
Yes.
soup.
Yes.
So are we able to execute that here? I think a lot of entrepreneurs and developers have tried to do that with the winery thing here. But again, like you alluded to, look what it's like outside right now.
Yeah.
You're making money 90 days of the year.
Yeah.
That's your ability to make money is for such a short period of time. Like, that's that, and that adds again.
You
to
have
that
to get really
hypervolatility.
clever at diversifying what you're doing so you can make money 12 months a year, but
Right.
your primary focus is like your winery or whatever. But then what are you going to do the other 9 months of the year?
Yeah. You have had a lot of different diverse entrepreneurial quests.
Yes.
We've talked
I
about
have.
the restaurant industry. You also had a boutique on Main Street in Penticton. Why don't we talk about that?
Yeah, so I opened it when my family moved up here in 2017, and I had my daughter was about 5 months old when I opened it.
Oh, wow.
So that's
brave.
I didn't really think it would be challenging
Kids
until
would change your life?
right. And then surprise, but yeah, and it was going pretty good, and then COVID happened, and I didn't really realize the tourism industry was so, I don't know, this was January right now, January, February, really quiet in the Okanagan.
Yes.
If you have a retail store, you really feel that. So it was going good, and then I think we're coming into our third year, and COVID happened just after the really slow months after Christmas.
Oh,
and then because of clothing stores and people try on clothes and stuff, it was like a health issue. So we did have to close. I think we closed from March until about June, and it was really extremely stressful, and I was like, I had an opportunity to get out of my lease, and I was like, I think I should take it. So I closed the store. It was really intense.
Now, obviously, I'm assuming that was bittersweet for you.
It was. We put a lot of work into it, and it was a beautiful little boutique, and it was bittersweet. But
nice to have that relief, but at the same time, you're like, all that work, all the vision,
yeah, you're
everything
kind of
else.
like, oh, So like that didn't, it's hard when things don't work out that you're
Yes.
trying to do and
Yes.
trying to make successful. It's challenging. But ultimately, I think it was the only decision that made sense. And I don't regret closing it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I regretted it from the second that I was like, this is the path that we're going on. It was just kind of what had to happen. But it was definitely like, I remember that feeling when COVID was happening. And I didn't really realize in the beginning of it that it was going to be as serious as it ended up being for globally, the whole world. It was really intense. So yeah, I just remember thinking like, oh, like people can't try clothes on, or if they try clothes on, then we have to steam them and then we have to put those clothes into storage. I think it was for 72 hours or something before we could put them back out. And it was just like, it was wild. I was like, so it just, yeah, it was a lot of silliness.
Oh man, that
Yeah.
must have been very frustrating for you.
It was, it was just a lot. Like it was a lot to process and a lot to, you know, you're constantly looking at the new updates and what is happening and what's changing and how to adapt your business to it. And luckily my landlords were amazing and they were like, okay, like if this is the steps you need to take, then no problem. So, yeah.
Pivoting out of that,
Yeah.
how did you pivot out of that?
So I had a friend and we actually started to do like local makers sort of stuff. When we started to do that online, and eventually we opened up a little spot in Summerland.
Cool.
And we had that for a couple of years. And again, like just retail in the Okanagan is really challenging.
Yeah.
So coming from Vancouver and stuff, I just used to the volume of people coming in and out of stores and just out and about all day long is a lot different than what it is around here. And
people don't think, oh, I'm going to go shopping in Summerland today.
No.
Versus downtown Vancouver or
Right?
Gastown.
Like
I'm going to Gastown, I'm going shopping.
Yeah, and there's just always people kind of wandering around, and there were like it did pretty good in in Summerland, and then we kind of it got to, I think just like the retail being in one spot, it just got to be like, is this what we want to be doing with our time kind of thing?
Yeah.
And so we decided to move on from that, and I didn't know what I was going to do. By this time, my daughter was five, and my husband was working out of town in Prince George. So one of the really hard components that I had throughout all of these working experiences or businesses experiences in Penticton and the Okanagan was juggling the care of her and owning and operating a business. It was really challenging because, you know, kids get sick, you got to stay home, you got to juggle that sort of stuff. And my husband was working out of town in Prince George for a couple years. So it was like 10 away, 3 home.
Whoa.
So it's like,
it
was insane. Yeah, it was hard.
Were 3 of those days, those were home days?
Travel days. I think he would get, trying to think now. I think it was like he'd get home on late Thursday night, and then he'd leave Sunday.
That's
kind of thing.
terrible.
Yeah, it was insane.
That is terrible.
So that was like kind of coupled in with like owning and operating and trying to juggle everything. It was like there was a lot of moving parts going on.
So what did you do about the childcare thing during those times?
I stayed home with her.
Did you have do you have family? Like any family to help with that?
Not really, no.
Whoa.
So as my daughter got older, we had some friends that she could go. We kind of did a really good, I have some really amazing friends in Penticton that have daughters too. And so, you know, as the kids got a little older, because you can't send like a 7-month-old to someone's house.
No.
You know, but when she was about 4, she could go over to someone's house for a little longer. But if she was sick, like I would stay home with her. And one thing, I've always put her kind of first in everything. So if I had to stay home with her, I would, the other things would kind of slow down. Like I would close the shop or
Yes,
like that sort of, which isn't good for a business either. It needs to stay consistently open, proper hours and stuff. But where was I going with this? Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say.
Well, I just had this conversation with a good friend who spent the holidays down in Vancouver.
Yeah.
They were having the conversation about exactly what you just brought up.
Yeah.
About how, they're both working.
Yes.
But by the time, and I'm sure you've heard this discussion before, by the time they do the math on childcare and logistics and dropping them off and picking them up and this and that and the other thing, she's making $50 a month.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
well,
it's gone. Yeah.
$50 a month, like what's that gonna, that does nothing for us. So why don't you just stay home and raise your kid?
Yeah.
Was the question that was proposed
Yes.
by my friend who was telling me this. It just doesn't make, there's just
It's
economically
expensive.
no sense.
Yes. For sure.
So, and like, what are the childcare options like in Penticton? Like, did you ever have to buy the service out to be able to be an entrepreneur?
When I had my boutique in Penticton, she was in a daycare at that point. I think she was like, towards the end when COVID happened, she was in a daycare, not when it first opened. So it was me, and I never had babysitters. I tried a few, and it just didn't click, I really like spending time with my daughter, and to outsource that, I was like, I don't know. So, but as she got older, she started to go to pre-K, which was great, and then she's in school, and when I closed the shop in Summerland, I was like, I'm not a good person at sitting still and not working.
Yeah.
So I started a cleaning company.
Amazing.
Yeah. Which is like a
service that everybody needs all the time.
Yeah. And I was like, as a mom who was super busy and like one component that I could never stay on top of because there's all these moving parts going on, was like, wouldn't it be amazing if I had help cleaning? And I love, so and it's a type of service too, that it's like, if your kid's sick, you can call the person whose home you're supposed to be going to and be, I'm sorry, my child's sick today. And, people are really kind and understanding in that. So they're like, no problem, I'll see you when she's better, kind of thing. So since then, it's developed into much bigger business, which has been pretty cool to see it unfold. But I just did that for a couple of years, and that's kind of where it's at now.
What's the name of the business for everybody who's listening?
It's called Habit and Kin, home and family. It's kind of what we're going for.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tell us about the product offering. Because I love a nice clean space. I really do. I think that you're able to think more clearly.
Yeah.
I think you're able to be more productive in a nice clean space.
Yeah.
Also, I've found in my business that I never know who's going to show up.
Yeah.
I've had really expensive people call and want to show up to my business and have really expensive discussions.
Yeah.
So having it look a certain way all the time is nice.
Yeah.
Cleanliness is, I think, really important.
I think I've read a lot of studies on it, and I can feel it too, is when your environment is not chaos, you feel better. And it really it's like a stress reliever kind of thing when you're organized, when your space is organized. And I kind of found that throughout all of that, businesses opening and closing and stuff, if my home was kind of organized, or if I, took time to clean my environment, I could kind of manage everything that was going on better. And I once, I was like, what can I do now that, the brick and mortar shop is closed? I came out of all of that really, really feeling strongly that brick and mortar is really challenging. Like you show up to the same place every day. You're kind of like in one little spot. And I think given my entire work experience, my personality does really good when I'm moving around and I'm able to like kind of continuously move and be productive.
Yes.
If I, like, and cleaning kind of came to mind, and it was like, I don't know how many people over the years I heard that was like, oh, how amazing would it be? I wish I could have someone come in and like clean my home, just a couple hours, help with the chaos.
Yes.
And I took that to note. And so when I transitioned into cleaning, it was kind of with that intent of helping people's environments be a little calmer, a little less chaotic. You can come home from a crazy day and be like, oh, this is nice.
We use your service in our home. I believe it's every 2 weeks. And when I come in after, and we like to keep the house tidy, but we also have 2 daughters who don't like to keep the house tidy. When we come into the home after your crew has been through, it is exactly as you've just described.
Oh, good.
It's just like this is nice. This is really nice. Thank you.
Feel like
Thank you very much.
It's like, I don't know, like I find like as adults, like like you're doing so much, like you're kind of giving. And then this is kind of like something for you, like you're like,
right.
Oh, like I'm giving myself something. Like this is a little treat for me. I can come home. My house is like, it feels good. And, like it's almost like, I don't know. It's nice.
It is. It's a nice little gift you can give yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
You could probably expand the business to be able to like, would you like us to deliver flowers when we come? Would you like it? How about a box of chocolates?
Yes. Would you like a nice meal prepared?
Yeah. Well, Karen was saying something about that as well, that you were threatening to do like a meal prep service or something like that.
I had it on for a little bit, and I had some people interested in it, and I found we got so busy with the cleaning aspect that I just wanted to focus on one thing at a time instead of trying to do so many things and getting kind of like overwhelmed with too many choices. So we've narrowed it down. We're really building up the cleaning department, and then perhaps like down the road we would offer meal prep and stuff.
That is it's a really interesting predicament that we're in the Okanagan, and you touched on it earlier about diversification.
Yeah.
Like you have to have a certain set of problems that you're solving for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in order to find out which problems people are having more than others, i.e. more sales than others in your business, you really have to put in a lot of time to be able to develop that.
You do. You really do.
And think like, okay, well, what's going to hit? Like, what do people actually really need? And what makes a real difference?
Yeah.
And you can think that like adding a meal service or whatever would be a good hit, but then the logistics of it are a nightmare because now you need a production kitchen and you need staff for that, and then you need harbos to transport everything, and you're like,
do I want to do this or do I want to focus on this? And we and I did it a few times, is rather than have a commercial kitchen and do the prep outside of the home, we would come in and do meal prep from the home.
Okay.
So we had seniors that were really interested and used that program, which was like, we'd come and make like salad, and like, if you have mobility issues and stuff and you have a hard time chopping and stuff, we'll come in and help you chop things. And we still get asked about it, but at this time it's just we've gotten so busy that it's like we can't focus on that yet, but it doesn't mean never, because I do love the food industry, and it'd be interesting to incorporate that in at some point.
Yeah, and maybe an opportunity for you to dovetail your business with another successful business that's already doing that.
That's actually a good idea, because it's like, and then you go back to the staffing, and then you have to find people who can,
I want to be responsible for more different types of staff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. So
crazy.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's really great. We love the service that you offer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's really awesome. What's it like living in the Okanagan? What's your, how long have you been here? You've been here since 2017.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 8 years
Yeah.
now. From a small town originally, big city, back to a small town-ish. I guess Penticton's a little bit bigger than Lund,
Yeah.
but how is it here?
I like it here. I was definitely ready to leave the city. And when I moved up here, my mom and John's mom were living up here. My mom since moved back to the coast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she found the smoke up here was hard on her.
Oh.
So I like it up here. It's really nice. It's different than the coast in ways that I didn't expect, which were like, I used to do on the coast, like we go hiking all the time and you don't really think about things. But when you go hiking here, you're like, oh, there's cactuses and there's rattlesnakes and there
are
cougar, like there's cougars on the coast, but they're like, you never see one. But like the other night there was one in our backyard kind of thing.
Wow, really?
So yeah. So those things have been interesting to get used to. But kind of cool. Like it's really neat. It's way different than the coast. And I like it.
Pace is a little slower.
Pace is slower. It's definitely sleepier, especially this time of year.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've really had to get used to because I'm used to like in the city. I think I lived there since I was like 18. So I was used to like that really fast, lots of things going on kind of environment, but it's nice. Like it's calmer. I have no desire at all to go back to a city. You know, we go down to Vancouver for a weekend and stuff, and it's really nice to go down and visit. And we go to a lot of restaurants and stuff, and we do that kind of thing, and go like, you know, do like there's lots of like art museums and stuff in the city that we love to go and check out, which isn't really here.
No.
Which we kind of miss, but other than that, it's really nice.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I like seeing the younger families doing exactly what you just described. You know, we have a lot of friends that moved to the city when they were younger. They're like, I gotta get out of a small town, and then they have a family and grow up a bit, and they're like, I gotta get back to the Okanagan as fast as possible.
That's basically, as soon as our daughter was born, we were like, I think she was like a month old maybe, and we put our house up for sale, and we were like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't visualize having like a baby in the city. It was
Well, and it is really great too, because you know when you see that energy shift where you have these, you know, a lot of the friends that we know that have moved back are entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Right. They're business minded. They want to come back. They're like, this was the business that we were doing in the city, blah, blah, blah. Let's shift, transition, blah, blah, blah. I think that that's going to further expand the business offering and service offering that we have in the Okanagan, which is great.
It's been pretty cool watching Penticton over the last like 7 or 8 years. And I don't know how long you've lived up here.
My whole life I've lived in the valley, yeah.
So yeah, like you must have seen it too. Like, but just in the short time that I've lived here, the downtown in Penticton is like, it's so cool. Like younger. There's so many like cool buildings going up, and there's like a little core going on down there, and it's like there's some energy down there. It's fun.
It is. It's good. It's really good. It's exciting to see. It's exciting time to be in business.
Yeah.
In the Okanagan for sure. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing your story.
Yeah.
It was great to talk to you and get some more insight and to hear where you've come from. And I love BC.
I do too.
Just to hear you talk about living on the coast and all of that, that was a really beautiful story.
Yeah,
it was great.
It's cool down there.
Yeah, cool. Awesome, Lyra. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.